Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first session of my Interactive Teaching Made Easy webinar series. I'm Laura Candler from Teaching Resources, and many of you probably know me from my website where I have an online file cabinet for teachers. In just a few minutes, I'll tell you a little bit more about myself, but for now, let's get started with a little overview of what's planned for this session. So, first thing we're going to do is kind of do a few little getting to know each other activities, and then I will share a little bit about, some of you may have questions about the professional development certificate that I made available, and so I'll give you a little overview on that, give you a little introduction to the whole series since this is the first one of the series. Then the main presentation is Plickers Made Easy. And after that, some free things I have for everybody and a giveaway for one person. You do have to be present to win, and hopefully everybody's signed in with their real name, because in order to get the prize to the person, I've got to be able to match up the winner's name with the records that I have. And then at the very end, we'll have a session with questions, answers, and people sharing ideas in the chat. I don't know if Peggy told you that we are not going to be, participants won't need to use a microphone or video or anything like that. We'll just be using the chat for sharing ideas. So I'm not sure how much Peggy told you about herself, because if you were here with us for the introductory material, I was having major technical problems getting on, but I'm here now. So I'll go ahead and just share a few things. As you've already figured out, Peggy George is the moderator for the session, and when I say I couldn't do this without her, you know exactly what I mean if you were here for the introduction. She's a retired educator who loves spending her time supporting teachers with the use of technology in their classrooms. She lives in Phoenix, Arizona, and she's been a professional educator for over 50 years, with many roles including principal, teacher, special education director, university pre-service education instructor, and so on. She hosts the weekly Classroom 2.0 live webinars, which are dedicated to supporting teachers with resources and practical suggestions for incorporating Web 2.0 technology into teaching and learning. And you can see why I'm so thrilled that she's my moderator. She totally keeps me on track. She's taught me everything I know about webinars, and I consider her to be a friend too. I think this would be a good time too to thank Classroom 2.0 Live for allowing us to use their virtual classroom here for this free webinar. Webinar software and programs are quite expensive, and I'm just so thankful that I have this webinar environment, this classroom that I can share from. So you're going to hear a little bit more about Classroom 2.0 Live at the end of the session. Okay. So a little quick shot of my website. Before we begin, I'm going to share a little about myself, and then I'm going to learn a little bit about you. As many of you probably know, I have the website at lauracandler.com, and I also have a blog, Corkboard Connections. And these are places where I love to share interactive teaching strategies that made a difference in my classroom. I taught upper elementary school, mostly 5th grade, some 4th grade, some 6th grade, for 30 years before retiring a few years ago. I really love teaching, and I have to say I do miss the classroom and I miss the kids, but I also love what I'm doing now. I enjoy collaborating with other educators, blogging, and developing new time-saving resources for teachers. Okay, now it's your turn, and Peggy's going to turn the whiteboard tools back on, and it looks like you had lots of fun practicing, those of you who were with us for the introduction. So where do you live? Use the laser pointer or the starburst to mark the spot, and then type your location in the chat. And I live in Fayetteville, North Carolina. So looks like we have a lot of East Coast folks, and I know that that's a lot of that has to do with the time zone, because I know on the West Coast it's much earlier, it's dinner hour and so on. But that's what I love about being able to record these sessions. So I'm just taking a moment here and sort of scanning through and seeing where everybody's from. I see somebody's from New Hampshire, and I was actually born in New Hampshire. Awesome. Okay, Peggy, if you would get those whiteboard tools turned off, and then I'm going to let you forward it to the next slide when you've done that. And then that way we'll be able to start with a clean slate. Okay, regarding the professional development certificate, it's a kind of a do-it-yourself project here because I do not have the authority to, award you professional development credits or anything for this webinar series. But I know that a lot of schools do offer options like this, so what I tried to do was, make it easy for you to get credit if you are able to do so. And the basic process, if this is new, I suggested that you download it before the session and take a look at it. But basically, this is a standalone webinar in that you can watch this one and you don't have to come back for the rest of them. But I'm going to be presenting a series of webinars on interactive teaching made easy strategies. So this time I just did one certificate instead of a separate one for each webinar because I really don't know how long each session is going to be. This one's going to be a little bit longer because of the introductory material, but when I do the one for next month, we're not going to do some of the, we'll do the pre-introduction, but we will kind of trim down some of the other material. So the idea was that you would log your times that you watch or you participate on here, and then whenever you decide you want to submit it for credit, you total up your hours and fill out a certificate and do that. And that certificate is on the webinars page on my website. Now, I am interested to see if you would answer this for me in the chat. Have any of you actually shown this to an administrator and try to find out whether this certificate would actually, they would accept it? And is there something else, do you need me to create another form to go with it where maybe you take more notes and maybe you show how you're implementing it? I want to do whatever I can do to be helpful. And I mean, one thing I can't do is I'm not going to be able to sign your certificates because I really, I wouldn't have time to do that, and I honestly don't know who's attended and when they've attended. But if there's something else that you need me to put together, I'd hope to do that before the session, but I haven't had time to, so just let me know. Okay, so if you have questions about it, I don't know if Peggy told you, but she kind of gathers questions during our session, and then at the end, she presents those to me, especially when she sees things coming up over and over again. Okay, so let's get on to the actual, series, and let me give a little introduction. And like I said, this part is in today's webinar, but in the future ones I won't go through some of this. I would sort of expect people to have started and looked at this. So the idea of interactive teaching, it's sort of a phrase that I just made up. And it has a meaning to me, but I'm kind of curious about, what do you think of when I say interactive teaching? And I'll say I wasn't thinking of interactive notebooks at all. Not that they're not great, but that's not really what I meant. So I see me having students fully involved in the lesson, not just listening. Someone put using Kagan strategies, cooperative learning. Yeah, whiteboards, hands-on materials, total participation. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking too. So some of what I do in this series is going to be like today's lesson or webinar on Plickers. There's a lot of interaction between you and your students. So that's kind of what I think of in a way with interactive teaching. But interactive teaching should lead to interactive learning because there's a lot of ways students can interact. They can interact with us as teachers. They can interact between each other with cooperative learning. They can do hands-on activities, so students are interacting with objects. They could be, that should be plural, concepts. Students should be interacting with concepts and manipulating and discussing and all of that. So really, it's just a huge, interactive teaching is kind of a huge catch-all phrase for best practices in teaching, pretty much anything other than just lecture and sort of the teacher at the front of the room just kind of delivering content. The idea for this series came to me because, you know, interactive teaching, I think everybody would agree, it's so powerful and it's so important, but you know, it's not always easy. This is just a sample of some of the things that I've written about on my blog and some resources that I have, like literature circles or using dry erase boards or sentence writing activities, math centers. These things are really important, but if you are just starting out on your own and maybe you're a new teacher or maybe you're wanting to try a new strategy, sometimes some of these things can seem pretty overwhelming. So when I was thinking about this series, I was thinking, you know, I love to create resources for teachers that make these kinds of things easier. Like, I kind of struggle through learning in my years of teaching. I kind of struggled through and figured things out. But then when I would get good results, I would think, how could I make this easier for somebody else? You know, I don't want somebody to have to go through what I went through to figure it all out. I want to create resources that will make it easy for them. And so that's kind of what I've been doing for a long, long time. Really, I started my website went up. I wonder if anybody remembers my old website. Doesn't look like this one. It had like a white background. It had like little dots all over it. It was this homemade website. But I put on my file cabinet, and when things were working well for me, I just upload free PDFs. And you know, over the years, I mean, I started it back in 1997, if you can believe that. So that's been a long time, and really my whole point was trying to save people the trouble that I went through and help them be successful. So I like to do, this is exactly what I'm going to do in the Plickers webinar. I'm going to give you a big picture kind of overview, because sometimes when you read directions about how to do things, it's like you get lost in the details and you just like, can somebody just give me the big picture? That's the way I feel anyways. And I don't know if you guys can hear the noise. There's a helicopter going over my house. I live right near Fort Bragg. So we just sort of have to live with this. But anyways, I like to give step-by-step directions for things. I like to create printables and like all kinds of variations, just like I did with the certificate. And I always give classroom management tips, because a lot of times when you're learning something new, you know, they teach you how to do it and you're like, yay, this is great. Then you go back to your classroom and it doesn't work. And it doesn't work because they forgot to teach you how kids do it and not how adults do it. So that's kind of my goal with this series. Now, I already have webinars on some of these things like book clubs and math centers and everything. This year I thought that these webinars would be shorter, except for today, because today has a lot of background to it. But the ones, I'm going to do one each month, and I don't even know, I don't have an ending date. Like, I'm just going to keep going with it for a while. And I want to focus on like short, small, like easy strategies that you can use in lots of different subject areas. And Plickers may not be the easiest thing to learn about, but I think once you get using it, you will really love it. So let's get started with Plickers. So using your polling tools, I want you to rate your level of knowledge and or experience with Plickers. So if you just learned about it when you heard about the webinar, that'd be A. If a lot of people have been talking about it at your school, but you've never tried it, that would be B. If you remember, if you would use the polling tool instead of the chat, like the chat area is fine, but like we can't compile the results. So if you would look at the picture there and click on the letter of the alphabet, Peggy switched it over. It's right next to the hand there, and pick the letter. So if you've used Plickers once or twice, C, and if you just love it and you use it as much as you can, then use D. So let me just look to see. I'm going to scroll down through here and see. So we have a lot of newbies, this is like a good mix. And then a lot of people who've heard about it and never used it, a few people who've used it once or twice, and then those people who have used it a lot, hopefully they'll be able to help us out by answering questions in the chat. Okay, thanks. All right. So Before we go any further, I decided I needed to tell you that I have a couple of Facebook groups. Actually, I run one of them, and I asked a secondary teacher, Chris Kessler, who has Kessler Science, if he would be willing to do a secondary group. But there's so much to learn about Plickers. It's so amazing. And when I first started learning about it a few months ago, I was actually wanting to present it at the elementary conference. And since I don't have a classroom, I couldn't test some of the things out. And I said, you know, I'm going to put together a Facebook group of teachers who are using it and ask them my questions, and then we can share and that kind of thing. And in the elementary group, we have over 500 people in the group. And the reason I'm not sure how many with the secondary. We did 2 groups because as I started looking at the way people were using Plickers, the secondary teachers were using it kind of in different ways. Elementary teachers were using it for things like taking their lunch count and that kind of stuff that secondary teachers may not need to know about. We'll learn some more about those things in the next webinar. Anyways, there's a URL down at the bottom where on that page, it's a page that I've just set up as very kind of there's not much on that page because I just set it up today. It has links to the groups. I just want to let you know there's 2 things you have to do if you want to join the group. One is you have to fill out a little Google Doc form, and then the other thing is you have to go click the join button and try to join the group. If you try to join the group without filling out the form, then your application won't be accepted. So you need to make sure you do those 2 things. If you tried to join the group and you were never added, that's probably why you probably didn't fill out the form. The reason I wanted to put it here is because I think if this is new to you, you might get a little overwhelmed by everything I'm saying. And I want you to know that there's help for you. That if you go in the group and you ask some of the questions that maybe I'm not answering, you will get great answers. So just be aware that this is a resource. It's a free group. Okay, so what exactly is Plickers? If you're wondering about the name, when I put it up there like that, paper clickers, it seems obvious, but I have to tell you that I had to do a lot of digging and research because people were talking about Plickers this and Plickers that, and nobody was saying where did that name come from. But if you're familiar with the Plickers devices that are, the hard, pieces of technology, they're expensive. The Plickers company, group, organization, or whatever came up with a concept of printing out unique cards for each student, and they kind of work like a QR code. And I quoted straight from their site. Plickers is a powerfully simple tool that lets teachers collect real-time formative assessment data without the need for student devices. And that is exactly what Plickers does. But it's a little complicated for a few minutes when you're trying to figure out, how does it work? And that's me. I need to know how it works. So that's what I'm going to share with you right now. So what you need, and by the way, these photos came from, I just put out a request in the Facebook group, who can share some classroom photos with me, and I got some great photos, and I really appreciate the teachers taking those and sharing them. But what you need for Plickers is you just need 1 card per student. You're probably going to laminate it or put it on cardstock, and the student is going to keep that card all year. And we can talk more about classroom management, like how to make sure they don't lose it and that kind of thing. But you need 1 computer with a projector and a screen to display the questions, and you just need 1 mobile device. It could be a smartphone, it could be a iPad, and I saw that the app is even available on a Kindle, for a Kindle. Does a Kindle have a camera though? I can't remember. I guess a Kindle, the Fire, probably for the Fire, not for a Kindle reader, but for the Fire. So anyways, any of those. So that's all you need to get started. So this, I'm going to let you, I hope you're looking at this on a large screen. If you're not, I'm going to talk you through this. I also wanted to let you know I am going to make a PDF version of this presentation for you. And I will leave out the introductory, material that's not relevant, and I'm just going to make a PDF of this presentation, and share it with you, because I don't want you to have to sit here and take screenshots. And I mean, you can if you want, but I promise you I'm going to make a PDF of this and send it to you. Anyways, here's how it works. So you have to, the mobile device and the computer like work together. It's like they're partners. So on the computer, you set up your Plickers account. And you kind of, it's called a library, is where you start adding folders and adding questions, and you assign each of your students a number of the Plickers card. And then, but you have to use your mobile device to actually choose the questions that you're going to use for a particular class period. Then the questions and answers are displayed like on a whiteboard, using a feature called the Live View feature. So that's designed for the students to see. And then the students respond by holding up and turning their Plickers. And I know you're thinking, if you have not heard of this, you're thinking, what? What? How does the computer know who it is and what their answer is? I'm going to explain that in just a minute. Then the teacher scans the cards using the Plickers app, and it's integrated with the device's camera software, and then assessment data is instantly available to the teacher and not for the students. And so it's actually, some of it I think may be available on the mobile device, but mostly when you go into your computer and you switch out of live view and you're switching to the teacher view, then you can see all the data. So I know it's kind of confusing, but just bear with me. I want to go through enough to kind of give you an idea about what to do, and then I think you'll be able to sort of take it and run with it. So how the Plickers device reads the response cards. If you're seeing this on a computer, you'll be able to see it better, but each card has a number. This is card number 1. That number corresponds to the student number that you assign in the computer. And then if you also notice on this sort of QR code looking thing, there's a letter of the alphabet on each side. And what the kids do is they rotate the card and they hold it up. So like if this student was answering a question and they wanted to answer B, they would hold it up with the B like up towards the top of the ceiling. And then when the card is scanned, the computer, on your mobile device, if you look at the picture on the left there, it actually shows the student's name popping up that's associated with that number. The green shows that they got the answer right, and the red shows they got the answer wrong. So right there on your phone, you're seeing and then if it doesn't scan it, it lets you know that it didn't pick up that person's card, and then you move closer or whatever to try to get that card scanned in. So I just think this is the most amazing thing ever. When I first heard about Plickers, I thought the teacher had to literally go to each child and like scan their card individually. And when I found out that all you have to do is kind of like point your camera at the room and just sweep around the room and it just picks them all up, I mean, it's like magic. It's amazing, but it's really awesome. So that's how it works. All right, so I'm going to go through this really quickly because I think Plickers has really good tutorials, so I'm not going to answer questions about this, but this is what you do. You first go and create a free Plickers account. You can do that on the computer, and at the top it has little tabs like Library, Reports, Classes, Live View. So you click on the Library tab, and then just follow the directions. You're going to add folders, and then you're going to add, you need to add multiple choice questions. Actually, it will do true-false questions and yes-no, but we're just going to say multiple choice for right now. All right, then you got to get your Plickers cards. Actually, ideally, you would get your Plickers cards before step 2, but the reason I put it here is because you can't really get them until you set up your account, because you are going to download the cards for free. There's a basic set that has 40 individual designs, 2 designs per card. Now, you can print them out if you don't have to pay for printer ink yourself, but if you look at how much black ink that takes up, that is a ton of ink. So a lot of teachers don't want to print them themselves, and there's 2 other options. One, I actually did this. You can just download the whole PDF, and then you can upload it to a place like Staples online printing, And I did that, and I printed the whole set of 40 cards. It cost like $5. And I know I would have burned up a whole ink cartridge with, printing those things, because it is a lot of ink. I didn't get them laminated at Staples because that would have been really expensive, but the printing was easy. Or you can purchase a set of laminated cards from Amazon. They do cost $20. I am giving away a set at the end of the webinar. I'm going to order them from Amazon and have them sent straight to you, whoever wins. A lot of teachers do get these because they're laminated with a non-glare lamination. They hold up really well, and they just feel like it's worth the investment. But anyways, you got to have these Plickers cards before you can start using it with students. Okay, next step is in your Plickers account, you're going to set up your classes. It's just a little thing. You click on classes, and it's like add classes, then you enter the students' names. If you're an elementary teacher, you could just have one class and have all the kids there, but like maybe you want to have separate grades. In fact, I would love it if the people who use Plickers would, talk about this in the chat. I think a lot of people set up like a separate class for like science or reading or language or whatever, and they assign their kids the same exact number, but they have them like in different, different folders. I just set up one test class. I know if you are like a secondary teacher, you have your first period class, and then your second period or whatever, you're obviously going to have different classes. But I'm not going to try to go into all those details because, you can get the answers in the Facebook groups and from the Plickers site. Now, here's a little tip that's I think going to save you a lot of aggravation. Create a test class that has a few fake students, imaginary students. And then let's say there's 40 cards in that set and you don't have 40 students, so maybe pick cards 37, 38, 39, 40 and assign those numbers to these fake students. Then you're going to set up a fake classroom. Now, if you have children at home, I'm sure they'd be glad to help, but my children are grown, so my TV and my door in my bonus room became my fake class, and I just taped up the Plickers in different, I rotated one for A, one for B, one for C, or whatever. And I was like, I was going to do it for professional development. I was like, I'm not going to walk into a professional development session not knowing, like not having tried it. Don't do it. Don't do it with your kids either. Like, try it out. So you create these questions, and then there's a little process in there where you have to pick the questions that you want to use for the next day's lesson, and you're assigning them to the queue. Then you have to get your mobile device, and you have to open up the Plickers app and then select the question there. Then you switch to the live view on the computer and see how it looks for students, and then try scanning a few cards. Now, I know that's why I know it sounds complicated, but honestly, after you do it, it just makes a lot of sense. But if you're like me, you just have to do it. You have to just set up your little test class and you do it, and then you will feel way more comfortable using it with students. Okay, then after that, before you even use it with the kids, you might just open up your account and then just kind of look around at the data. But you're not going to have much data because you just got these 3 imaginary kids and they probably got most of the questions wrong. But it just kind of helps you see what's available in there. Now, this is something that everybody who uses Plickers is so excited about because they just added this feature, and the whole Plickers is free, but they added this score sheet where you can get reports of your data. It's amazing. If you can see this chart, you can look across the top. It shows the questions, and even if you have images in the questions, it shows the images, and then it shows the student names down one side and what they got right and what they got wrong. And it's like, oh my gosh. And I have to tell you, I was a little skeptical when I saw that they were announcing this last week. We got an email, and I thought, I wonder if they're going to be rolling out like premium features that you have to pay for, and this is going to be the first one. So when it came out, I saw that it's free, yay. And I actually emailed the company, and I asked for some information about, are you going to, I just kind of want to know, like, are you going to keep the things that are free now? I kind of more or less said, I know you're coming out with some premium version of this. I mean, really, somebody's got to pay the bills over there, right? I mean, we know that's coming. But the question is, will the free things still stay free and then just add more value? And that's pretty much what I got. You know, they didn't want to reveal anything to me, but they said they had a big commitment to it being free for teachers to add their own questions and things like that. But I'm quite sure they're going to have other features like databases of questions and all kinds of things. But this is still really awesome. Okay, so what are some different types of questions that you can set up in Plickers? You can have poll questions where there's not really a correct answer. You don't have to identify there being a correct answer, so you might use this like in a class meeting or something, and you know, you're voting on like what field trip do we want to take? Here's our 2 choices, and you put the choices in, but you don't have to say that one's right or wrong. You can use it for assessment questions, multiple choice. It could be A through D answers, or you could just have A, B, and C for answers. You can set up true, false, and then I think it's just depending on the way they rotate it, like I can't remember if it's on the card or not, like A is true and B is false, but you know, it's all in there. And you can, it's best if you enter the questions and the answer choices in advance, but we know how, you know, that's tough to do. A lot of teachers say that they'll enter them as the kids are working on one problem. They might be entering the next question, especially when it comes to things like test prep or something like that. So, you know, there are ways to make it easy. Okay, so this session is about interactive teaching. And I think one of the most important things about interactive teaching when it comes to teachers and students is to use data to drive your instruction and your instructional decisions. And that's what I really love about Plickers. And I will have to say, at first when I heard that Plickers was just multiple choice, I was really disappointed because I've never been a teacher to use much multiple choice. I really want to see how the kids, you know, work out the problems. But I realized that you can't really get good data, you know, quickly without multiple choice. So a blended approach is best for interactive use. So first present the question or problem and then give independent work time just the way you normally would do. And the kids could work the problems on dry erase boards and put something in a journal, or like maybe they're like trying to figure out a circuit with electricity and they're like, you know, they're using objects. All right, but then as they're working, you're moving around the room using your great teaching strategies, just like you always do, to observe, you know, what they're doing and how they're solving the problems, and you're thinking in your mind, oh, they're having trouble with this or whatever. Then when most of them appear to be finished, you know, you say, teachers, you can put in the chat, like, what do you say? Some people say, show what you know. Some people say, showdown. Some people say, show me. What are some of the things that you guys say when it's time for the kids to hold up their cards? So anyways, the kids hold up the Plickers cards to show their answers or solutions, and then you scan the cards to gather that formative assessment data. You might be wondering, like, why do they have the numbers and letters so tiny? That is obviously to prevent kids from copying each other. And I even was thinking, well, wait a minute, look how these kids, some of them are holding a portrait and some are holding like landscape. And I thought maybe the kids would be looking around thinking, oh, everybody's holding their card a certain way. But I looked at the Plickers cards and they're all different. So sometimes orientation A is at the top in a portrait format, sometimes it's landscape, so they can't really tell from that. And then you use that data that you're getting to make instructional decisions right there on the spot. Like, do you need to reteach that? You know, who needs extra practice? Who's ready to move on? Can you, do you need to pull a small group and put the other kids in centers? So this is why I love Plickers so much, is because it takes like the best of both worlds. You've still got the kids working out these problems, but then I would envision only doing, you might only need to do 4 or 5 Plickers questions to kind of check in with the kids as to how they're doing. You don't want to do it in a way that the kids are encouraged to just guess at answers. So, oh, I see some stand and deliver as an idea. I'm kind of peeking over here at the chat. Some great ideas. I saw a question here about slow pokes. What do you do about slow pokes? You know, that question came up in the Facebook group, and I don't know that we've gotten a good answer for that. So if some of you can help us out, if you do this, like what kinds of short tasks can you have kids working on who work quickly? I mean, you can't have them get up and go off to centers. It's like they worked out their problem, you know, and then they're waiting for the other kids. What do you do? Anyways, put your ideas in there, and that'd be something that we can discuss in the Facebook group too. Okay, now the last remaining problem I had with Plickers, I mean, I told you I didn't like the multiple choice, but then I resolved that by combining it. I originally thought that the teacher had to walk around the room and physically scan everybody's cards, and I was like, that's not happening in most classrooms. That's not true because you just kind of sweep around the room. My last thing was, how do you get around typing in all those questions? And then I realized you could use task cards. You can use task cards to make it much easier. So there's a couple of ways to do this. One is you can just physically have the task cards in your hand, like get them out of your file cabinet or whatever, out of your centers. Put one down in front of under the document camera and show the question. What you would do is you create a generic Plickers question that just has the answers A, B, C, and D. It doesn't even tell which one's right, but you need to pull that up in order to integrate it with Plickers and to be able to scan their answers. The problem with that is that the data can't be stored because you're going to erase that data the next question that you put up. But it's still a good one if you just want to get like an immediate response, a formative assessment, and you're not all that worried about storing the data. So that is a really nice solution. The next thing is if you I say planned assessments, like you know in advance that you're going to want to assess them on certain things. You can create images from task cards with a screen capture tool. And you can add them to your Plickers library. And you don't have to type a single thing except the question number. You upload the image. If you have cards that have multiple choice answers on them, you upload it, and then that's it. And this one I'm showing is from my Parts of the Water Cycle task card set. And what I've started doing, I don't have a lot of multiple choice task cards, but I've actually been creating task cards to go with some of my other resources and products. And anytime I do have a set of multiple choice task cards, I create images and I put them all in a folder so that you don't have to create images. All you have to do is upload the images to your Plickers account and use them. So you might be wondering, well, what do the kids see? Do they see the answers? So here's how it appears. I actually just did this earlier today, and then I did some screen captures. So I put in the task card, and I put set 3A, and the kids would see the actual task card. You see there's no answers marked. But you see on the right side, the teacher's view with the mobile device actually shows that A is the correct answer and B or C are wrong, because when I entered it, I put in that A was the correct answer on that particular card. So that's a really time-saving thing to do. So you might be wondering, wow, like I wish I knew how to do that so I could make my own. And your wish is my command, because I created a free tutorial that goes step by step through how you create images from task cards and how you add them to the library and so on. And this is available in my TPT store. Like I said, it's free. It's also on the interactive page, teaching resources page. There's a link, and I'm also going to be sending you a follow-up email with a link to this tutorial. I had intended to put together a selection of task card images from some of my products to include, and I just did not have time to do that today, but I'm going to add that so that you have some images to practice with. So before I move to the next slide, though, I have to tell you, those of you who are here in the webinar before I was, because I was having all those technical issues, today has been the most crazy day ever because I was working so hard to try to make Plickers easy for you guys to understand. And I really underestimated the time that it would take to do that. And so it's just kind of funny. What came to mind is how many of you guys have done that lesson where you have kids write out how to make a peanut butter sandwich? And they think it's easy, but then when they start writing it, it's just incredibly difficult. That's how I felt when I was doing this, because if you try to sit down and, like, you can sort of tell your friend about Plickers if they're standing in the classroom and like, here, watch this, this is awesome, look at what happens, look at this. If you're trying to explain it in words and you're not in a classroom, it's very difficult to do. So on top of all that, then I had these technical issues at the end that caused me to be late. But anyways, I'm glad that I was able to get on. I'm glad I had Peggy with me who could keep things going until I could finally get in here. And I'm certainly grateful that my daughter had this nice computer that I could jump on. All right, so it is time for a giveaway. Now, let me tell you how it's going to work. You can choose, now, because I'm actually going to be sending these, if you're not in the U.S., you would have to pick the second option. But if you want to win, if you're in the U.S. and you would like to win that set of Plickers cards, you are going, and people are already reading and they see what to do. You're going to click the hand tool, and I'm trying to see where the numbers are. Peggy, I'm having trouble. Like, yes. Oh, I see. You're in the little red circle. I got it.
Right.
There's a little red circle.
Name.
Okay. So, yeah, I see it now. So I'm going to keep talking while people are doing this so they will understand what's happening here. You're clicking the hand tool and raising your hand, and then you're getting a number. The problem with this method in the webinar is that if people leave the webinar, or more people, you know, like you might be looking, and like right now Alexa Jones is 8. But if somebody above Alexa drops out, then Alexa becomes 7. It's very confusing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down a number over here without looking at the screen. Let me look and see what the last number is. And then I'm going to do like a screen capture. Let's see, so. Peggy, I'm having a hard time seeing the full number. It looks like it's, how many are you seeing? I'm seeing like 70, 69
no,
is the last one.
It's gone up over 100. It started over then.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and that could be a problem, but let me just write down a number here. Okay, I've written down a number, and now I'm going to see if I can find that number on here. And let's see. Okay. I've got my winner. Okay, Laura Burnett. Laura, if you would just type in the chat, yay, it's me, or whatever you want to say, just so that I know that you got the message. Laura Burnett. And Laura, I'm going to be looking on the registration information that you submitted to find your email address and try to contact you. If you don't hear from me later this evening, you can email me at contact@lauracandler.com and I'll be in touch. Now, I want to mention something for a lot of people in the group. In the directions it said to log in with your real name. And maybe some people are not comfortable doing that. That's fine. But Laura's number actually wasn't the one that I drew. I drew somebody before her, but I kept looking down to find somebody who put their whole name, because I have to be able to match it in my records. So if you attend the next session, if you would please put your whole name, then you would be eligible. So, you know, just kind of live and learn kind of thing about how this one's going to work. So I'll be in touch with Laura. So we're about to the end here, and I wanted to thank Peggy again for sharing this room with us. And Peggy, I don't know if you talked at all about Classroom 2.0 Live before it started, but if you did, some people weren't here. Would you tell them a little bit about your weekly show?
I would love to do that. I didn't talk about that earlier because I knew it was coming up here at the end. But first of all, I just have to say how great this webinar was. We have all learned so much, and we are going to go to Q&A. So let me just say something about Classroom 2.0 Live, because I would love to have any of you that can join us for our webinars. We hold them every Saturday, and they are designed for teachers, very similar to these that Laura is doing tonight. And they're often about tools, but many times we have featured teachers who come on and share their classrooms and some of the cool things they're doing in their classrooms. And sometimes we have designers of tools coming on. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat to give you a better idea of what our shows are about. That's the link to our archives, and we record everything. So if you can't join us on a Saturday, which is often difficult, then you can go into the archives and view the recording. I create a live binder for every single show. So if our topic, like it was this last week, was all about grant writing, and we had an amazing presenter. Some of you may know the fairy grant mother. Well, that is Daisha Jones, and she came on and presented for us, and her recorded webinar is in the archives, and all of her resources are in the live binder. So I would love to have you either join us for live sessions or check out the recordings. That would be great. And it's all done in Blackboard Collaborate, so it's the same platform that we're using here tonight.
Thank you, Peggy. You know, I probably should have, oops, something happened. Oh, did you switch to the next slide? Okay. I should have probably put that slide after the one where I said to stay for the questions and answers, because that part of the session can be really, really helpful. And I know, it's been just about an hour, and I know that a lot of people, this is more time than they may have allocated. I promise you the next sessions are going to be shorter, because I'm going to skip, the information about the certificate and all of that. I'm just going to direct people back to this webinar, and so it'll definitely be shorter. But once again, the certificate information is available on the page where you first learned about the webinar. My webinars, just go to lauracandler.com, look at the top. It's under, actually I think under workshops, or something like that, and you look under free webinars, and you'll be able to get this form. And if you want to know more about it and you missed the beginning of the webinar, just watch the recording later, but it's pretty well explained on the certificate. So let me move on to the next thing. And I just wanted to give credit to the clip artists who helped to make my presentation lovely today. So these are some of my favorite artists. The digital classroom clip art girl is actually my daughter Wendy. And she started out drawing things for me back before she had a TPT store, and I encouraged her to get started. So anyways, and the others, I use their work all the time. So our next session is Plickers 102, Beyond Assessment. and just shorter, like just different strategies and different ways to use it where maybe you're just not assessing. There's kind of creative uses of it that I'm actually getting ideas from the Facebook group we're sharing there about different, like using it with cooperative learning and things like that, some different ways. So if you want to register, I already have the registration link set up on the webinars page if you want to register for that. And then the last thing is we'll do questions and answers, and we kind of go for a while here. Peggy's going to share some that she saw come up over and over. And if you have ideas you want to share about how you're using Plickers, you can just type them in there. If you have questions, you can enter them, but you might want to wait till Peggy asks the questions first before you enter yours. Oh, wait a minute. Somebody, Francie? Oh, I just saw Francie put something in here about, she says, Francie does the Caring Classrooms with Donors Choose Facebook page and group giving page with me, and she has been a moderator on my webinars before. And she said, tell people they can write a Donors Choose proposal for the Amazon cards and also from TPT items from your store, like task cards. So she says she's going to explain more on the Caring Classrooms page, and why don't you put that link in there, Francie, so that people know if this is for people in the United States who can use Donors Choose to get resources. Okay, oh, and Peggy just put in the chat, and I'll say it again, when you log out, there's going to be a thing that pops up, a survey. Just exit out of it. You're not going to get a certificate even if it acts like you are. That information is just going to be deleted. So it's just a regular part of the Classroom 2.0 live room, and we can't really turn off that feature. So just to let you know. Okay, all right, so Peggy, what questions did you see that were coming up that you think that should be answered here as opposed to maybe just in the Facebook group or something like that?
Well, I'm sure probably all of them could be answered in the Facebook group, but let me ask you a couple of them. There were a number of people asking about things related to using the cards. B. Hawkins wanted to know if a card could be used for more than one student in different class periods.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking in the chat for the answers to that. I'm pretty sure that if you have different classes set up, you can have like Sally assigned to number 1 in a certain class, but then later in the day that same number is assigned to Bobby in a different class. I think the only reason that you need like a huge set of cards, because they do have some large sets, is if you were teaching like at a college level and you had 150 people in the room, but I think that you can. I'm pretty sure you can.
And Susan Peak wanted to know, as a math teacher, she said she found that images can't be added to questions when using Plickers. Will this change? Maybe you know the secret.
They can't. I mean, I've done it. It's a new feature. I don't know when she last tried it, but I would say use my tutorial and just go through the tutorial.
I think that would be great. And Stacy wanted to know, did the students see who got it right and who got it wrong, or just the teacher?
Very good question. This is a feature that the teacher should turn off. Like, I'm pretty sure there's a way you can turn it on where it could be displayed, but normally on the whiteboard, I think the names show, they appear, I'm getting my words mixed up here, but like it shows whether or not the child's card has been scanned, but not what they answered. So let's say if, Bobby's back there and he's holding his card wrong or whatever, it will show you, and I think it will show the class too, that his card, that number, or that student's card hasn't been scanned. But if it is showing you the answers to everybody, then you need to tweak that. And I think some teachers didn't realize they had to go to live view, and they were like putting their cell phone under a document camera and just like, they didn't understand how the two things work together, and that was really the problem from what I heard. And somebody, Esther says you can show who got the answer right, or you can hide it so they don't know, which I would think most people would Okay, Cassie says you got got it, Laura. Students see a check mark if their card's been scanned.
Okay. Jennifer wanted to know, does the iPad or phone have to be connected to the smart board in order to just see the information from the scan?
I think it has to be on like a wireless network or something. But Cassie, you just have to have the computer, but then like if you're using your phone, then it might not be wireless, but it will be on your phone network, and then it I guess it syncs online in your Plickers account, and then it sort of sends information to the computer. But I don't know, if you had an iPad and it was not connected online anywhere, I don't think it would work. I think it would have to be connected on the same on
I think so too. And Heather asked, could you scan the cards through webcams? Would that be an option?
What do you know? What I don't understand.
It's a follow-up to the same question.
Like the task card. Oh! You're talking about the Plickers. No. I was thinking task cards. So could you use a webcam? Well, it has to have the app. So I don't know that there's an app. That would be an interesting thing for them to add, wouldn't it? If there was some kind of an app. But I don't think you could do it unless the device had an app.
And there were a couple of questions related to whether the lamination causes a glare that might interfere with it.
So what I've heard is you should laminate one and test it. Because some people it seems to cause a problem, some it doesn't. If your laminator has more of a matte finish to the plastic, it probably won't. And it also might depend on the lighting in the classroom, whether there's a glare on it. So don't laminate maybe card number 40 if you're not going to use that one, and then test it out in different places in your room, far back, to the side, different kinds of lighting, so you don't have a problem. And then I also want to mention, since you brought it up, I noticed that a couple of teachers said that they like to print theirs on different colors. Some of them use it as one class is green and another class is yellow, and apparently the lighter colors are better. If the card is too dark, like a dark blue or dark green, the device is going to have trouble with that. And I have one more thing. I saw a question asking about how many cards are in the set. The set has, the Amazon set has 40 cards. So if somebody's saying they thought there were only 20, there are 40 cards in that set.
Okay, and Wendy had a great question. She wanted to know, how do you encourage slow pokes? She has some that are slow and hesitant.
This is one situation where teacher classroom experience rules, and since I have not used it with students, I haven't really figured out that piece. So I know my students used to have things like accelerated math worksheets or some kind of homework, or putting their spelling words in order or something like that they could kind of have off to the side. And when we did certain activities where they were having to wait for other kids, they would pull something out to work on. So I think you definitely, especially if you have if you're presenting math problems or something where it might take a student 10 minutes to work out the solution, you do have to kind of treat it the way you might treat other things where you're having to wait for the kids. Yes. Oh, and Peggy, there's one more thing. I don't know if there was a question about it, but I did see in both the Facebook groups some mention of people scanning the kids' stuff and then using it for a grade in the grade book. And I think that if you're going to do something like that, you need to have a written record of it. And one of the teachers in our Facebook group shared where, I can't remember, I think it was Beth, share, maybe, anyways, there's a picture in there where a friend of hers kind of has like a page that she has like 10 problems, and it's just numbered for the kids, like, 1 through 10, and the kids have to write the letter of the answer there. And then they still use Plickers, and that helps the teacher, get all the data in the system easily, so he or she does not have to score the papers, but she collects the papers as like the documentation, the proof, or whatever. So if a child missed like 5 of them, you would have that paper to go back and say, oh, they just weren't holding their card the right way. I just would really be hesitant about putting a grade in the grade book if you have nothing to back it up.
Great point.
I think you're really asking for problems there, and I think you need, so I would say you could use it a lot for formative assessment that's just, driving your instructional decisions, but if it comes to assigning grades, you need to have something to back it up.
One last question, Laura, because I know our time is up. Christina wanted to know if there was a way to share Plickers files that she creates with other teachers.
No, and I actually want to speak to another topic that's related to that, but right now that is not a feature. I suspect that that's going to be one of the things that they will roll out with their premium features. This is just me speculating and just thinking about, if they're going to keep a lot of this free, they're probably going to take, I bet you they're going to have like school accounts, and then, people within the school who get the site license. I mean, that's just my speculation. I don't know. But right now, no, you can't. And I've even heard that you can't, like if you think you're going to share an account with a friend, if they're logged on to the account in their classroom, you can't log on in your classroom. Like you cannot have 2 people logged in on different computers. So, because some people said they tried that. But I did want to speak to the whole thing about with the task cards. If you purchase a set of task cards and you make images, or you buy some from somebody like me who makes them, that would be the same kind of copyright situation as just giving it out to people, or printing copies and giving it to teachers. And I would have a concern if they roll out a thing where, people can share their accounts with the whole school. It's just a little something to think about. But the way I think about the task card images right now is if you buy a product, you can print it, you can use it for your classroom. So if you're making images and they're staying right there in your own class account, to me that's still, like a educational use of it, and I don't see where that would be a problem.
Terrific. I think that pretty well covers it.
Yeah. Okay. So good. So what we'll do then, the next session, and this is, I'm considering something. Remember we talked about, this is just a little chatting here between me and Peggy, guys, but you can listen in and contribute if you want. But I have never used Blab before, but Peggy was telling me about it, and I was thinking it would be really fun if we could schedule like a Blab session where people come back and kind of tell how this worked for them and ask questions and talk about it. So I'm going to follow up. I haven't had a chance to actually get in a Blab session myself and learn about it. Have any of the remaining people on the webinar, like, do any of you use Blab or know about it? So that's something, because I feel like people still need a way to sort of ask questions and talk. But hey, there's the Facebook group too. And just be patient with me adding people to the Facebook group, because I know after I get off this webinar there's going to be a ton of new requests, and I will get through them as quickly as I can. Peggy, you want to tell them real quick about Blab, and then we can end the recording. I mean, people can leave whenever they want to right now, and they can listen to it later, but you want to just tell them a little bit about Blab real quick?
Sure, I will.
What it is?
I just happen to love this tool, and I've been following a lot of educators on it. It's not just for education, so you'll find all kinds of topics on there. But it's basically a platform that's very similar to Google Hangouts, but there are only 4 windows for people to be on screen, on camera. But you rotate people in and out of those windows. So if you're having a conversation about what's your favorite way to use Plickers, there will be a host. It would be Laura probably, and she would be in one of those windows. And then all the other windows are available for people to jump in and out of to ask a question or share their experience. And it's just a great way to have a conversation that I like because it's verbal and it's recorded, and you can, if you choose to record it, and you can save it for later and post it so people can go back and listen to it. It can be 20 minutes long or it can be an hour long. It's completely up to you, and it's totally free. So I would encourage you to take a look at it and check it out.
Thanks, Peggy. And I hesitated to even mention it. I'm mentioning it here at the very end because I have never used it, and but it sounds fun, and it sounds like, like I don't want to start our next webinar off like chatting about this one. Like I know this is a long one, but my goal for the remaining ones is to not be as long. And so I felt like if we had another venue, like to just blab about it, talk about it, share ideas. But we also have the Facebook group that's pretty awesome. So anyways, Peggy, I'm going to ask you something. Actually, why don't we stop the recording right now? But folks, if you still have questions for me, like Laura, you had a question about the Google Doc or whatever, you can stay in here and ask them. But I just want to thank everybody who stuck with us here till the end, and I do hope it was helpful. And when you do leave, click out, exit out. Don't just walk away, because Peggy's going to make a recording of it, and everybody has to be out of the room, before she can process the recording. Peggy, is there anything else that needs to be said before you stop the recording?
Nope, I'm ready to stop it now.
Okay.